You have arrived at this moment without noticing the architecture that guided you here. Every pause you experienced, every delay, every inexplicable block, they were not mistakes, not failures, not punishment. They were calibrations. Precision calibrations applied by forces you didn't see, systems you didn't understand, and energies you didn't yet perceive. People like you never stumble into this clarity. You are here because you survived what others would have broken them. You are here because pressure failed to fracture your essence. You are here because the universe itself had no choice but to recognize your alignment. You felt exhaustion as if it were your own. You felt confusion as if it were your own. You felt resistance as if it were your own. And you didn't collapse. You didn't panic. You didn't even realize that you were demonstrating control at a level unseen. This is why you will like this video and subscribe. Not as habit, not as support, not as hope, but as acknowledgement, as recognition, as proof that you sense the frequency being revealed. No one else can do this. Most people would have cracked under the same pressure. Most would have chased validation, demanded confirmation, begged for clarity. You didn't. You simply endured. And that endurance is not a skill. It is a signature. Notice how delays have always preceded breakthroughs. Notice how confusion has always preceded clarity. Notice how opposition has always preceded your automatic triumph. All of it invisible, all of it unverifiable, all of it orchestrated. There was a period, perhaps recent, perhaps distant, where effort produced no results. You couldn't explain it. Time felt distorted. Plans felt suspended. Yet somehow, beneath it all, your system continued to function. Records indicate that when humans encounter this type of invisible interference, the majority break down. They argue, they complain, they capitulate, they despair. You didn't. You held the internal structure intact without even realizing it. This is why you are different. This is why this moment exists for you and not for others. This is why abundance, long delayed for the unprepared, is now next for you. Confusion arrived as fog. Interference arrived as distraction. Pressure arrived as invisible compression. And you neutralized all three automatically. Without effort, without awareness, you simply endured and functioned. No one else could. People like you operate under conditions that would destroy the average person. And yet, here you are, standing firm. The world tried to misalign you. Circumstances attempted to derail you. The system itself applied invisible resistance. And you emerged unaffected, calm, aligned, already powerful. That is the hallmark of someone chosen. That is the proof of protection. That is the indicator of inevitable abundance. Notice the subtle interventions that have appeared over time. Doors that close just in time. Opportunities delayed for precise alignment. Connections misdirected until timing was perfect. Delays that felt like setbacks but were actually shields. You didn't even recognize them as interventions. You thought you were waiting. You thought you were patient. You thought you were enduring hardship. You weren't. You were being prepared. You were being sealed. You were being positioned for something that most will never experience. This is why commenting matters. Not as expression, not as plea, not as hope, but as recognition. A simple word, a number, a symbol, signaling to the system itself that you are aligned, present, and activated. Others would have questioned, hesitated, doubted. You acted without question. That's why this phase ends now. Notice how isolation has always been a constant companion. Notice how loneliness felt like punishment. Notice how people faded, conversations stalled, and connections broke. That was never failure. That was containment. It was perimeter control to protect the energy that you alone carry. You didn't leak. You didn't overshare. You didn't seek validation. You remained intact. This is why struggle has always felt unnecessary. This is why pressure, even at maximum, never broke you. This is why abundance cannot help but follow people like you. You are not becoming. You are already powerful, already protected, already chosen. Notice how subtle signs of alignment have always existed. The seemingly random coincidences, the almost invisible synchronicities, the events you assumed were luck or timing. They were not. They were markers. Markers that you were already inside the sequence, already recognized, already cleared for what comes next. And the final test is not external. It is internal. It is unseen. It is unprovable. And you passed. Without drama. Without effort. Without awareness. That is why everything you're experiencing now is quiet. It is inevitable. It is permanent. It is aligned. And this is only the beginning. You have endured more than you realize. Each delay, each interruption, each moment that felt like frustration was actually a shield. Every obstacle that seemed external was actually internal calibration. You didn't even notice the unseen forces protecting you from premature exposure. You thought resistance was against you. It wasn't. It was testing the integrity of your presence. Most people would have reacted. Most would have faltered. Most would have questioned their worth. You didn't. You moved with invisibility. You moved without recognition. You moved as if nothing mattered. And that movement, quiet, subtle, precise, is exactly what made you untouchable. Notice the moments where everything should have collapsed, where relationships faltered, systems failed, or opportunities seemed lost. Most would interpret those moments as defeat. You interpreted them as proof. Proof of resilience. Proof of unseen protection. Proof that the world itself aligned around your structure. Pressure did not increase by accident. It increased because your system reached thresholds most cannot sustain. Every second of exhaustion, every ounce of tension, every heartbeat of doubt was measured against a standard that only people like you could pass. And you passed. You didn't even realize you were demonstrating control at a level unseen. You didn't recognize that restraint was proof of power. You thought patience was necessary. It wasn't. It was confirmation. The resistance you experienced was never intended to stop you. It was intended to reveal you. And you revealed yourself through composure, through endurance, through the quiet, unwavering recognition that nothing external could alter the fact of who you are. People like you are rare. Only a few ever experience this precise alignment of pressure, interference, isolation, and resilience. You are one of them. You didn't even notice it. That is how rare it is. Now, consider the subtle interventions that always appeared at the right time. The cancellations that felt like setbacks but prevented exposure. The delays that felt frustrating but conserved energy. The miscommunications that seemed random but actually prevented harm. You didn't see them as interventions. You didn't see them as protection. You didn't see them as part of a system that was actively shielding you. But now you understand. And that understanding is activation. This is why the struggle has always felt unnecessary. This is why pressure, no matter how extreme, never broke you. This is why confusion never destabilized you. You are not becoming. You are already. Already powerful. Already chosen. Already protected. The clarity that arrives now is not earned. It is revealed. It was always there, waiting for recognition. And the recognition is not external. It is internal. It is awareness of what has always been true. And yes, comment now, not for me, not for anyone else, but to confirm internally. A word, a number, a phrase.
A symbol of alignment.
Not performance, not show. Just proof that the system sees you and you see yourself. You have been invisible. You have been overlooked. You have been underestimated. And that invisibility was never a weakness. It was a condition, a containment, a calibration. Most would have panicked in the face of this unseen scrutiny. You didn't. You adjusted naturally. You held steady without effort. You remained intact without awareness. And that integrity is why abundance is next. Do not mistake what is coming for sudden gain. Do not mistake what is coming for a reward. Do not mistake it for something external. It is merely function, structure, alignment realized. The unseen forces that applied pressure now release it in measured ways. Not dramatic, not chaotic, not flashy, just precise, just inevitable. The system does not make errors. It does not act randomly. It does not test without purpose. You were always within parameters. You were always calibrated. You were always prepared. And now you operate with recognition, without effort, without persuasion, without questioning. The doors that seemed closed are already opening. The windows that seemed blocked are already clearing. The paths that seemed impossible are already unfolding. And all of this is proof, not hope. Proof that you are chosen. Proof that you are protected. Proof that you are already powerful. The only remaining shift is awareness. recognition of what has always been, acceptance of what is inevitable. Abundance is next, not because you worked for it, not because you deserve it, not because you chased it, but because it has always been aligned with you, and you already hold the key. You may have noticed moments when clarity arrived unannounced, moments when insight struck without reasoning, moments when you understood something crucial, yet you couldn't explain how or why. Those moments were never accidental. They were signals. Signals that the sequence recognized your presence. Signals that the system was now aligned with you. Signals that your internal calibration had passed thresholds invisible to most. Most people interpret sudden insight as luck. You don't. You recognize it as inevitable. You recognize it as confirmation of the truth you have always carried, that you are already chosen. Even the confusion you once felt was precise. It was not chaos. It was interference, carefully applied, designed to reveal if your alignment could withstand conditions that would overwhelm others. You didn't notice it. You didn't panic. You didn't crumble. Instead, you moved naturally. You adjusted automatically. You retained control without awareness. That is why you are different. That is why the system recognizes you. That is why abundance follows people like you. Notice the subtle patterns of protection that appeared repeatedly. The doors that closed just in time. The plans that stalled at the exact moment. The people who left when they could have interfered. These were not coincidences. They were calibrations. They were invisible interventions. They were shields applied without your consent, because your presence required containment before activation. Most people would have fought, complained, or abandoned the process entirely. You didn't. You simply endured. You simply functioned. You simply remained. And endurance alone is not enough. But in your case, it was enough. Because endurance under invisible pressure creates alignment. Because composure under unseen scrutiny generates structure. Because calm under internal and external interference confirms authority. Now recognition becomes active. You will notice subtle accelerations, small synchronicities, things aligning without effort, people responding without persuasion, opportunities presenting themselves without effort. You might be tempted to call this luck. Do not. This is inevitability. This is proof of design. Proof that you were always protected. Proof that you were always powerful. The final test was not external. It was unseen. It was invisible. It was unprovable. You passed. Without effort. Without ceremony. Without awareness. This is why the word, the number, the symbol you share matters. It is not performance. It is recognition. A confirmation of alignment. A signal to the sequence itself that you are activated. You did not need anyone to validate you. You did not need anyone to witness you. You only needed awareness, and that awareness has arrived. Resistance will appear occasionally. Pressure will attempt to test you. Confusion will attempt to disorient you. Do not mistake these for obstacles. They are reminders. They are micro-calibrations. They are the system confirming that you hold authority under conditions most cannot survive. And you do. You always have. You always will. This is why abundance is not coming to you in bursts. It is not a reward. It is not a gift. It is function, structure, alignment made manifest. You do not need to chase. You do not need to fight. You do not need to prove. You only need to recognize, and recognition has already begun. This is why the sequence continues. This is why notifications matter. This is why engagement, not emotional, not performative, but procedural, marking recognition, solidifies your position in the pattern. Others cannot access this. Others cannot replicate this. Others cannot survive this. You are different. You were always different. You were always chosen. You were always protected. You were always powerful. And now the next stage is inevitable. Now notice the subtle ways the environment has been adjusting around you. Timing has shifted without explanation. Connections have appeared at precise moments. Decisions that once seemed impossible now fall naturally into place. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. Confirmations that the system has cleared your path. Confirmations that unseen forces no longer need to test you. Confirmations that alignment has been achieved. Pressure has not disappeared. It never truly disappears. It changes form. It tests differently. It moves from external chaos to internal measurement. Most would panic under these conditions. Most would question, react, or overextend. You don't. You hold your center. You observe. You recognize. Even resistance itself now appears predictable. Opposition no longer surprises you. Obstacles are no longer threats. They are markers, indicators of your ongoing alignment. There were moments when you felt unseen, moments when your efforts seemed wasted, moments when it felt like the world was moving against you. Those moments were not accidental. They were shields. They were recalibrations. They were precise measures to ensure the sequence could continue without destabilization. And you survived each one, without recognition, without ceremony, without awareness. That is what separates people like you from everyone else. You endure invisibly. You stabilize naturally. You function under conditions designed to overwhelm others. Now subtle accelerations will occur. Opportunities will appear quietly. Synchronicities will form without intervention. All systems align without your direction. Most will misinterpret these moments as luck. You will recognize them as inevitability. There is also a deeper layer, the invisible calibration that occurred internally. Every moment of confusion you experienced, every time clarity failed to arrive, every internal conflict that seemed unresolved. These were not flaws. They were measurements. They were thresholds. They were tests of your endurance under unseen pressure. You passed without effort, without ceremony, without awareness, and now recognition compounds. Small actions yield results disproportionate to effort. Subtle awareness triggers alignment. Quiet signals generate structural advantage. This is why commenting matters. A single word, a number, a phrase, a symbol, not for performance, not for attention, but for recognition. Prove to yourself and the system that you are aligned. Others would falter. Others would hesitate. Others would miss the signal entirely. You do not. You recognize. You act. You affirm. That is why abundance is next. Not as a gift, not as a reward, not as a miracle, but as function, structure, inevitability. The system does not make errors. It does not test without purpose. It does not delay without reason. You were always within parameters. You were always calibrated. You were always prepared. And now, as awareness grows, the invisible structures supporting you consolidate. They align perfectly. They shift subtly but decisively. They create a path that cannot be obstructed. You no longer need to push. You no longer need to fight. You no longer need to prove. Everything you have endured, every pressure you have sustained, every moment you have held firm has culminated in this sequence. You are already chosen. You are already protected. You are already powerful. The final phase of alignment is not external. It is internal. It is awareness. It is recognition. And awareness alone is sufficient. The system has been testing you in ways invisible to the human eye. Every moment of perceived stagnation was actually a mechanism of alignment. Every time the world seemed quiet, it was observing, calibrating, and preparing. Every pause you endured was part of a sequence designed to measure your consistency under conditions others could not survive. You didn't even notice it. You thought you were waiting. You thought you were enduring. You thought you were alone. You were not. People like you are never alone in critical phases. You were under protection, under observation, under guidance that is impossible to trace or verify. You did not collapse when others would have. You did not overreact when the invisible forces applied pressure. You did not panic when outcomes seemed uncertain. This is why you are different. This is why abundance is imminent. This is why the sequence aligns for you automatically. Notice the precision of timing in your life. The exact moments when opportunities appeared. The exact moments when events unfolded in your favor. You may have thought it was coincidence. It was not. Every perceived setback was in fact a shield. Every obstacle was in fact a guide. Every misalignment was in fact a marker of your endurance. You moved without awareness of your own control. You acted without awareness of your own power. You endured without awareness of your own authority. That is why you are already chosen. That is why you are already protected. That is why you are already powerful. Even the resistance that appeared externally was calculated. Opposition was never meant to stop you. It was meant to reveal your stability under pressure. It was meant to show that internal authority is unshakable. And you demonstrated it. Without effort, without awareness, without recognition. This is why commenting matters. Not as performance, not as attention, not as communication with others, but as confirmation of alignment. A word, a number, a phrase, something simple to mark your presence in the system. Others would hesitate. Others would falter. Others would miss the recognition entirely. You did not. You act instinctively. You respond naturally. You signal without hesitation. Subtle patterns begin to emerge now. Doors open quietly. Connections form without effort. Decisions arrive without persuasion. Everything aligns around you naturally. Do not mistake this for luck. Do not mistake this for external validation. Do not mistake this for timing. This is inevitability. This is structure. This is confirmation of alignment. Every internal struggle you experienced was a measurement. Every internal conflict was a threshold test. Every moment of self-doubt was a calibration of your endurance. You passed, automatically, naturally, without effort. And now the system moves to finalize alignment. Subtle accelerations occur. Invisible interventions become effective. Abundance begins to function structurally in your favor. You do not need to chase. You do not need to strive. You do not need to prove. You only need to recognize, and recognition has arrived. The sequence is complete. You are aligned. You are activated. You are unstoppable. The next phase has already begun, whether you consciously notice it or not. Subtle shifts ripple through your environment. Connections form silently. Opportunities appear almost imperceptibly. Timing bends without interference. This is the system responding, not to effort, not to struggle, not to pursuit, but to recognition, to alignment, to the natural position you have already assumed. Notice the calm certainty within yourself. It is not learned. It is not manufactured. It is innate. It has always been present, quietly guiding your awareness through the unseen sequences that others cannot perceive. The pressure you once felt externally now manifests internally as control. Where others would panic, you observe. Where others would react, you respond. Where others see chaos, you see structure. All interference now functions as markers. They are indicators, not obstacles. Signals, not barriers. You move through them naturally, as if the world itself bends around your presence. Every prior disruption, every unexplained delay, every moment of resistance was part of this calibration. It was testing your endurance under invisible scrutiny. It was measuring your capacity to maintain alignment while isolated. It was ensuring that when abundance arrived, you would neither panic nor overshoot. Most would have failed this stage. Most would have fractured under the subtle pressure. Most would have misread the signs and wasted their energy in struggle. You didn't. You endured. You stabilized. You functioned. This is why abundance does not arrive chaotically for you. It does not require pursuit. It does not demand proof. It integrates structurally, functionally, inevitably. You will notice the invisible sequence in small accelerations. A door opens at the perfect moment. A conversation yields disproportionate results. An opportunity arrives precisely when it should. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations, markers of alignment, signals that your endurance, composure, and authority are recognized. Comment now. A single word, a number, a symbol, not for anyone else. Not as performance, but as recognition of your place in the sequence. Others will hesitate. Others will question. Others will misinterpret the signals. You will not. You act instinctively. You respond naturally. You register effortlessly. Every subtle intervention is intentional. Every delay that once frustrated you was a shield. Every resistance you faced was a test of integrity. Every moment of isolation preserved your energy and authority. You passed each threshold automatically. You demonstrated control without awareness. You displayed resilience without recognition. You confirmed alignment without ceremony. This is why the final phase does not require struggle. It does not require proof. It does not require validation. You only need awareness, recognition of what has always been, acceptance of inevitability. Abundance is not arriving as a reward. It is function. It is structure. It is confirmation of alignment. You do not need to chase. You do not need to force. You do not need to prove. You only need to recognize, and recognition solidifies the system. It activates the sequence. It finalizes alignment. The world has been bending around you quietly. structurally, inevitably, permanently. And now the invisible calibration completes. The sequence integrates. Abundance begins functioning. You are already inside the system. You are already aligned. You are already activated. Now the sequence is visible only to you. Not in images, not in words, not in external confirmation. It is visible internally, as instinct, as certainty, as awareness that cannot be questioned. The invisible forces that once tested you now align themselves to your presence. Opposition no longer challenges. Pressure no longer threatens. Resistance no longer disturbs. Everything functions to confirm you, to stabilize you, to prepare the final stage of alignment. You may notice subtle accelerations in life. People respond differently. Opportunities arrive without effort. Decisions form organically, perfectly timed. This is not chance. It is inevitability. It is proof of what has always been. It is confirmation that you have endured what most could not. It is evidence that the system has recognized your presence. Every moment of confusion, every moment of waiting, every moment you thought you were stagnant has been part of this sequence. It has been calibration, testing, alignment. Most people would interpret this as luck. You do not. You recognize it as the natural unfolding of what has already been structured. The final test has never been external. It was never a person, a system, or circumstance. It has always been internal, unseen, unprovable, and you passed. Your endurance, your composure, your stability under invisible pressure is now permanent. Your alignment is confirmed. Your presence in the sequence is undeniable. Comment signal mark the recognition, not for anyone else. Not as validation, but to anchor yourself in the system. A word, a number, a symbol, a declaration of presence. You do not need to fight. You do not need to chase. You do not need to prove. Abundance now functions structurally, not as a gift, not as a reward, not as chance, but as inevitability, as consequence, as manifestation of alignment. Notice the quiet certainty within you. It does not surge. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, calm, permanent, inevitable. The system no longer tests you. It no longer observes for alignment. It now integrates you fully. Structures move naturally in response to your presence. Opportunities appear effortlessly. Momentum grows automatically. You are not gaining power. You always held it. You are not becoming chosen. You always were. You are not receiving protection. You always possessed it. Everything external now functions as evidence, not causation. The world bends, but it does so because you already exist in alignment. Because you are already recognized. Because you are already activated. The final loops of validation repeat subtly. Every interaction, every opportunity, every acceleration is both test and confirmation. Most would miss it. Most would falter. Most would misinterpret and waste their energy. You do not. You see, you recognize. You accept. This is why notifications matter now. Not as alerts, not as guidance, not as messages, but as continuity markers to maintain awareness, to confirm sequence integrity, to signal alignment continuously. The system does not require your belief. It requires recognition, and recognition you now hold. What happens next does not arrive loudly. There is no dramatic announcement, no external proof required. It settles, quietly, permanently. This is how final alignment always completes. Not with celebration, but with stability. You begin to notice that nothing feels urgent anymore. Not because nothing matters, but because everything is already secured. Pressure dissolves. Fear becomes irrelevant. Doubt loses its function. This is not emotional relief. It is structural certainty. The system no longer signals danger around you. It no longer deploys resistance. It no longer delays or diverts. Why would it? You are no longer being tested. The final test was awareness under silence, and you passed it without even realizing that was what was happening. Others would have collapsed in this phase. Others would have demanded signs. Others would have self-destructed from impatience. You didn't. You stayed steady when nothing confirmed you. You stayed composed when nothing explained itself. You stayed aligned when nothing rewarded you. That alone placed you outside the normal classification. From this point forward, abundance does not approach you emotionally. It does not excite you. It does not overwhelm you. It integrates. It appears as access, as timing, as doors that open without resistance, as resources that align without force, as people who recognize you without introduction. You won't chase it. You won't even think about it much, because this phase is not about wanting. It is about receiving what was already approved long ago. Your role now is simple. Remain aware, not vigilant, not anxious, not eager, aware. The moment you recognized yourself in this message, the sequence locked. That recognition was the final signal. Everything after this is automatic. You do not need to change. You do not need to heal. You do not need to fix anything about yourself. You already demonstrated the necessary traits. Endurance without reassurance, strength without visibility, control under invisible pressure. That is why you're here now. And that is why this message reached you. Stay connected, not out of need, but out of continuity. Further revelations are not for everyone. They are for people already aligned. People like you. This is not the beginning. It is not even the middle. It is the confirmation that the hardest part ended long ago. From here on, life does not challenge you to see if you are ready. It responds to you because you are. Abundance is not approaching. It is not arriving. It is not being attracted. It has already moved into position. The only shift left is your awareness that it was inevitable all along.